5.
What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? This is your boy 5-Piece, producer and engineer extraordinaire. And today I'm checking in with another lesson as always, this time focused on recording. And I specifically wanted to talk about setting up templates for recording. This is for all the artists at home that are recording themselves. I'm going to show you this in Pro Tools. However, what I'm showing you is going to translate into other DAWs, whether you're using Logic, Ableton, Cubase, etc. So I want to dive into this. Maybe we could just jump into Pro Tools and I'll just show you how I would generally structure my template. And then you can find some ways to apply this in your own setup or maybe even replicate exactly what I have going on here. So I'm going to jump in here and just get started. So the first thing that we want to do in every setup is we need to have some tracks to record on, right? That's the most important thing. Now I'm going to propose something that's a little bit different for most people. A lot of places such as colleges and whatnot that teach you how to record, they'll teach you to record onto playlists. That's something that I used to do as well when I learned in college. I was using playlists in Pro Tools all the time. However, I've learned afterwards, after working with a lot of very talented people, Grammy Award winning people, that that's not actually the norm, especially when it comes to hip hop and pop music. So we're going to set up this template to mirror what those people do and just kind of get it going from there. So the first thing that we need to do is set up a bunch of audio tracks. I'm in Pro Tools, as I mentioned, so Pro Tools is a little bit more complicated than your average DAW. There's usually way more steps. This may be easier to do in your setup. It just depends on what you're using. So we're going to set up a couple of audio tracks. We're going to say 11 mono audio tracks. And the reason why it's mono is because we're going to be recording an individual microphone set on a human voice. So I'm going to create that. We got these tracks. And I'm just going to label them and maybe I'll explain what they are afterwards. So we're going to make this first one our record track. I'm going to color it red so it just stands out. And then I'm just going to call the other one Vox 1, Vox 2, and I'll just copy Vox to make it easier on myself. Vox 3, Vox 4, Vox 5, Vox 6, Vox 7, Vox 8, Vox 9, and Vox 10. So we got 10 Vox tracks here. I'm going to color them pink. This is a personal preference, but I do like using colors. Just helps me visually identify what something is. I don't even have to know what it is. I'll just see, hey, these are pink. They must be vocal tracks. So we got these 10 vocal tracks and we got our record track. Okay. Now what we're going to do here is, and this is different from the playlisting option that I was mentioning, what we're going to do is we're going to use the record track to essentially record our takes as we're recording. And once we get the take that we want, instead of going to a new playlist like we would traditionally, we're going to drag that take onto another channel, such as these Vox channels, and we'll listen. If we like it, we could keep it in and just keep recording and punching in. Or we can mute this, still keep it for maybe later if we want, and just record a brand new take on that same spot. Well, we'll show you a little more in-depth example in a bit. Let's just get this whole thing set up and then we can really take a look at it. So we got these tracks set up. The next thing that I want to do is whenever you're recording, you need to have some effects on your tracks as well. You want to have some reverb, some delay, stuff like that. So what I would do is I would create some aux tracks. I'm going to create 5 stereo, not mono, stereo aux tracks. And you might be wondering what an aux track is. An aux track is something that you can send a signal to. You can actually pass the signal through it as well. So for example, I could send this Vox 10, I could send it to be received on aux 1, and then I could send that aux 1 to go somewhere else. And this could actually be direct, as I just mentioned, or it could be via a send. So it could be used as a send effect as well. So in different DAWs, they might call these different things. Aux is one thing, bus is another thing, a send is another thing. Usually these are all just the same thing. It's a blanket term that people use interchangeably amongst these sources. So got these auxes set up. I'm just going to name them. So we're going to label everything and then we'll actually get into the nitty-gritty of the routing and setting it up. I just want to get you guys familiar with what this is comprised of and then build from there. So aux 1, I'm going to make it a long delay. We're going to have to set up the delays and stuff as well, but at least if we have an idea of what's what, we'll be good. So I got long delay, medium delay, this is a short delay, And then I'm going to do a plate reverb and a hall reverb. Now these are just ones that I like to use in my setup. You might find yourself wanting to add some additional ones, perhaps a slap delay, maybe a distortion bus, parallel compression bus. These are some more advanced ones, but we could talk about that a little bit later. So I got these labeled. I'm going to color them all green. That's just what I color my effects, and I know that they're effects for that reason. So I got those. We're going to place them eventually as well and route them correctly. And now we need just a few more tracks, but we're honestly almost done setting up this template, at least from an initial perspective. So we're going to need one stereo audio track. I'm going to call this beat. This is where your 2-track beat would go. So if you're recording on a WAV or an MP3, usually this is your producer's mix. So you just house this here. And I know you might be wondering, well, what if I have stems? I actually recommend that you don't record with your stems. The reason why is, as an engineer, I know when somebody comes in here with stems, it's super annoying for me to have to, suss out everything, balance everything, just to get set up so we can record. That process can honestly take a long time. Instead, I'll just record to the 2-track beat, and then since I have that 2-track exactly as it needs to be as the producer gave it to us, we could just focus on recording the vocal, and then we could replace that 2-track later with stems and mix it properly if we need to. And we usually do, but this is just more of an efficiency thing than it is about being very particular. So we're going to have this track for the beat. Maybe I'll color it purple. And now we're going to create the final tracks in this. We're going to create 3 stereo aux inputs. And I'm going to label these and then we'll talk about what they are. So the first one's going to be a vocal master. Second one's going to be an instrumental master. And then the third one is going to be mastering. Okay? I'm going to color these different colors. So I've got that in a light baby blue kind of color. And I'll make my final mastering blue. And I can add a little comment here, final out. Okay? So we've got everything set up. Ultimately, these 3 buses that I just created, the vocal master is going to be where all the vocal tracks ultimately go, including the effects. The instrument master is going to be, the instrumental or the beat, in this case just a 2-track. And then our final mastering is going to be where both of those buses ultimately sum. Okay? So now let's actually go through and route this accordingly. I'm actually going to do this in a reverse order because I think that might make more sense. So let's start with the mastering, for example. I'm going to let this continue to come out of 1 and 2. This is my main speakers. I'm going to change the input so that it comes in on, let's say, 51 and 52. I'm using some of these buses elsewhere, but we'll just start fresh here. So 51 and 52, and I'll rename this mastering. Okay? I'm going to go now into my instrumental and vocal master, and I want these to ultimately go to the input of my mastering. So I'm going to set the output of them from 1 and 2, which is what it is right now. I'm going to set it to that mastering bus that we just created, which is yellow because I'm using it, so boom, mastering. And now we have to set the input of each one as well. So I can actually cascade this in Pro Tools if I hold Shift, Option, Command. And if I click on the top one and I go to bus, I'll choose 53 and 54, and you see it's 53, 54 here, but 55, 56, hence the cascade mention. And I'll rename this, so the first one is Instrumental Master, and the second one will be Vocal Master. So now those 2 tracks are set to receive a signal from those 2 buses that we set up. We'll do the instrumental one first because it's super simple since we're using a 2-track beat. I'm going to change the output from 1 and 2. I'll set it to instrumental master. So now the instrumental should, or the beat I should say, will go from here and feed this instrumental master, which would then go to mastering. The input, I'm just going to set to no input. I could have just left it. It doesn't really matter. I'm not going to be recording on that track, but just to keep things really clean, we'll set it to no input. Let's do these vocal effects. I'm going to change the output. See how it's 1 and 2 right now. I'm going to just set them all to go to the vocal master that we just created. Now, I'm going to mention sometimes what I will do is create another aux that all of these effects would go to. I'm not going to do it here. I mean, it is great when you're mixing. It'll give you a little bit more control over each element. However, not the biggest deal. Right now, they're all just going to go in sum with the individual audio tracks at that vocal master level as well. So got those set up. We have to set up the inputs of them though, and each of these have to be a unique input because they're all unique effects, such as long delay, medium delay, etc. So I'm going to do the cascade thing once again, Shift, Option, Command. I'm going to click on the input of the top one, and I'll click 57, 58, and you see it cascade, 57, 58, 59, 60, etc., etc. I'll just go through these and rename them. So long delay. Next one will be medium delay. Next one will be short delay. And then we got a plate, reverb. And finally we have a hall reverb. So those are set up. Still got to apply the effects and all that. We're going to get there. We're just trying to focus on the routing for a moment. So those are routed. Let's go into our Vox and our record track. All of these tracks are ultimately going to go to the same destination as the effects, which was the vocal master. Okay, I'm going to change the input so there is no input across the board, but my record track, I'm going to set it to receive the signal on my interface. My mic is set up on mic line 1, so I'll set that. And this track again is going to be the place where we focus on actually recording the take, so I would record enable this and start recording, and then bring it down onto these other tracks. Okay, so right now everything is routed correctly, and we could really be sure by importing some stuff, but let's set up our effects and just get things routed a bit better, or at least just set up better before we double check and test everything. So let's start with the long delay. It's really just setting up our effects first. So long delay, I would say this would be about a half note delay. I'm going to focus on using just stock stuff. I want this to be relevant to everybody, and if I can make it work with the stock stuff, then you can as well. I'm going to go in and set up long delay 2. Here we go. And I like using presets. Presets just help me get there a little bit faster. Delay second note. Let's just stick with the classic. Okay, so I'll put this on. And right now we should be getting a half note delay here. It also has the note meter here, so you can manually select it if you want, but I know that this is going to be cool. My medium delay, I want this to be a faster delay than the long one, obviously. So let's see what Pro Tools has for me here. Medium delay, what do you know? Go into the presets again. And I want this to be a quarter note. So I'm going to do a quarter note delay, or fourth delay as it says here. And we can work with that for now. And then I'm going to do a short delay. Same exact recipe. Go in, short delay plugin. And the key to a short delay is it's going to be an eighth note. So I'm going to create an eighth note delay. And I could definitely maneuver with these parameters and change stuff. I might do that. But let's just stick with the preset for a second. So we have a half note, just so you guys all know, quarter note, and eighth note. Okay, those are our delays. So they're going to be just slightly different rhythmic timing, right? And then we're going to get into our reverb. So we have our plate reverb. These are just different textures, right? Every reverb has a few different textures. And what I'll use is, let's just use the stock deverb. I'll even copy this over. We'll address this hall verb in a second. And I'm going to go here. Let's just do vocal plate, because obviously we're recording vocals. And then I'm going to go into my hall verb. I'm going to change this to, let's just do large hall. Okay, cool. So now these are all set up. We have our 3 delays, got our 2 different reverbs, right? They're going to feel a little bit different because they are different textures, but those are all set up. So now the key is we have to be able to send signal to these effects. The way that I would do this is via a send, right? We have the send category here. I'm going to click and select all these tracks, including my record track, and if I hold Shift Option, I'll be able to send all of these the same bus. I'll be able to send the same bus to each of these different effects channels. So for example, let's start with the last one, long delay. If I go down here, long delay, you see it populates, and all of them are going to be set to infinite, so we're not going to actually be sending any signal until we decide to. So I'll do this across the board for each one. We'll do medium next. We'll do short as well. Oops, that was an accident. It's supposed to be plate. There we go. And then we'll do a Hall verb. So these are our essential effects, and now they're, as you can tell, they're on each of these channels, and they'll be sent to these individual effects tracks. So if I want to apply, a long delay to one track but not the other, I can send it and have that track be affected while not affecting the other ones. So I could also just have a bit more control over the elements, right? I could choose how much I want to send, and I could choose exactly which tracks I want to send, rather than putting my reverb directly onto a track or putting a delay directly onto a track. Obviously, if I have to do that on an individual track and I have to apply multiple reverbs and multiple delays to each track, if I do that every single time, eventually I'm going to start running out of CPU, RAM, and my session is going to start, crashing, clicking, popping, and just giving me all sorts of problems. So for that reason, we rely on using the sends. It just makes your computer run a bit more efficiently, and it lets you just achieve a more cohesive effect across all the tracks that you're trying to affect. So this is set up. Everything is routed correctly. What I'm going to do is I'm going to save this right now as a template, and then I'm going to bring in a beat. I'm going to put it on my beat track, and then maybe we'll do a little test vocal. I have a microphone right over here. I'll bring it into the frame, and you guys can see that this works and is just doing what it needs to be doing, and it's set up correctly. Ultimately, we just want to make sure that everything is routed correctly so that when we actually sit down to use this, it's going to fly. Okay? So let me save this as a template first. We're going to go to File, Save as Template. I got my own little category here, 5-piece presets. I'll extend this, and you can see that there's a few different templates here that I've used, and I always save new templates even if I update something. So as you can see, 5-piece full mixing template, August 2017, 5-piece full mixing template, January 2018. So they might be slightly different, slightly improved, as I might call it. But I just want to always have these just in case maybe one day I'm like, you know what, 2017 was sounding a little bit better than 2018. What was I doing then? Just for that reason. So I'm going to save this as a new one. I'll call it recording template lesson. Hit OK, and now that will be in my list. Whenever I want to set up a new session, at least in Pro Tools, I can call upon that template, and this will open up exactly as it is, ready for me to go. So now let's actually import a beat and get everything set up in a good way. I'm going to bring in a beat that I have. Let's do explosive. I'm going to copy it, and the reason why I want to copy it in Pro Tools is this is going to put it in the Pro Tools file. So if that beat ever gets deleted from its original location, I'll still be able to open up this session and the beat will still be there without any problems. As opposed to add, if I add, it's going to look for the original location of the file. That's not really going to be helpful if something gets deleted because it'll be gone at that point. So I'll press done. It's going to say where do you want to save it, destination. Automatically it's set to this template, or this folder for this template I should say. Press OK. I'm going to drag it down onto this beat channel. Now the reason why I do that, that's why I have this set up. It's just efficient. I can instantly put it on this channel and have it routed the way that I want without having to click into the output and the input and change stuff. So now that I've done that, I'll delete this. Most important thing that I have to do now is set the tempo. Luckily I wrote down the tempo. I'm going to turn off my conductor. 141 BPM is the tempo of this track. And what I'm also going to do, actually, that I forgot to mention, is create a click track. This is your metronome. So if I play this, we should hear the metronome, and everything should be in sync with each other right now. Okay, sounds like it's on time. I don't need to play the full thing for you to know. But we know that the beat is in sync. I wrote down the tempo. That's also just something that I did for myself to make it easier. If you're producing your own tracks and you're going to record on them, I encourage that when you bounce these tracks out, you include the tempo information. Even if it's for somebody else, just do that. It makes it way easier for that person to make sure they get the right tempo, so that way you can fly your hooks and copy and paste them from one location to another while preserving their timing on the track. So, done that. And if I play this right now one more time, let's actually look. You'll see that it's going to go to the instrumental master and ultimately go to the mastering.
5.
So you see that. Now if I mute the instrumental master here, we're not going to hear it. Right? So that's how you know things are routed correctly. This is a good thing in this situation. We just want to make sure that everything is routed properly. Now another thing that I actually forgot to mention is we would want to solo safe our channels. So I'm going to actually solo safe to explain what it is. It essentially just allows you to solo a track. So let's say, for example, this beat, if I were to solo it right now, you wouldn't actually hear it because it's being routed to this instrumental master. And when it's soloed, the instrumental master becomes muted because it's only supposed to focus on soloing this one track. For example, I'll show you. We don't hear anything, right? Now, if I solo safe the track, what's gonna happen is when I solo a channel, it's gonna not mute these other channels on purpose. So for example, I'm gonna solo safe. If you hold Command and click on the solo button or the S, you'll see that it becomes transparent. And now when I do the same thing, we're gonna still hear the beat. So I'll solo the beat.
5.
You get the point. Now we want to actually do this across the board. I want to do this on all my effects tracks because ultimately when I'm soloing a vocal, I will want to still hear, at least in my situation, I will still want to hear, you know, how is the reverb sounding when this vocal is soloed. And then if I really don't want to hear it, I can manually go in and just mute that reverb, let's say. So I'm going to solo safe all of these as well. And that should be good. So to summarize, solo safe your effects, so all my delays and reverbs, and solo safe your master track, so your instrumental master, vocal master, and final master out. So now that we've done that, maybe let's test the vocal and see if everything is set up correctly. I'm going to bring my click track to the top just so that everything is nice and clean and organized. I'm going to bring in my microphone over here. I'm not an artist, nor do I play one on the internet, but we can at least do a couple of things and see how this is working. Okay, so I got this set up. My interface is already set up, gain staging wise, and as you see, you can also hear a little double of my voice probably, but you see the signal coming in, right? I'm going to bring this record track down. And we just want to test the effects. Well, before we even test the effects, look, you see my vocal master, see the channel working, right? If I mute this, it's still going through. Yeah, cool. So we know that's routed correctly. If I mute this, we're not seeing it on the mastering level. Still okay, right? Everything is routed properly. Let's just test out our send effects. So if I go to my long delay, hello, 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 you can hear the echo. You can hear the echo. Let's go to my medium delay. Yes, man. Right, short delay. Ha ha. Actually, it's really short. That's kind of awkward. Hey. Actually, it's really short. It's pretty much like a slap almost. We'll do our reverb. Yo. Hear that ambience. And we'll do our hall verb. You. A little bit bigger. So we know that all of our effects are routed correctly as well. I'm going to bring this back up to the top. I'll get this out of the way for a second. But yeah, as you can tell, everything is routed correctly. And right now we're in a position to start a recording session quickly. Someone could literally walk in right now. And now that I have it set up as a template, I can always just call upon it, open it up, and literally just press record. As long as I import my beat and set the tempo, I'm ready to go. I can throw reverb on right away, delays right away. I can do a lot of different stuff within this session, and you can tweak this as well, right? This is just a starting point. But yeah, definitely try to implement something like this into your setup. It'll make your life a hell of a lot easier. You won't have to struggle when you're first sitting down to work on something or just to record in general. And if it's of any value to you, I will have a template available for sale if you are interested in purchasing my personal template. It's not what I've shown you here. It's a variation of this, yes, absolutely. Much of the same principles apply. However, I've beefed it up with a bunch of plugins and stuff that I use in all of my mixes. Doing just a lot of general practices and good practices that I am showing you in my tutorials, but I could save you that time of learning and setting it up by just selling you this template directly. So if that's interesting to you, I'll keep you posted on that. Just stay tuned on my website and on my channel, and you can buy that very soon. And yeah, that'll conclude this lesson. So as always, guys, please like, subscribe, comment, and share. If you got value out of this, share with your producer friends, artist friends, anybody that you think will get value out of this, especially people who are recording themselves and may not have the best habits yet. So hope you got a lot out of this. As always, it's your boy 5P signing off. See you guys.
5.